Electric bill, $1.1 thousand. I was shocked by the sudden spike in our electric bill. It had never even reached half this amount before. When I discussed it with my husband, Oswald, he thought for a moment before making a suggestion. Maybe we should try turning off the breaker at night. We hardly use any electricity at night anyway. I wondered if this would really save us any money. Nevertheless, I followed Oswald's advice and started turning off the breaker at night. Then, one day, things finally changed. As usual, after turning off the breaker and going to bed, my smartphone suddenly started ringing. Struggling in the dark, I finally managed to grab my smartphone and saw a barrage of missed calls from my daughter-in-law, Stephanie. Why would Stephanie call? As I held it, the smartphone vibrated again. I answered the phone immediately. Hello. Michelle? Enough is enough. What's going on? Stephanie was incredibly upset, not giving me a chance to speak. Later, I wondered, why did Stephanie put herself in such an unfavorable situation? My name is Michelle. I'm a 70-year-old housewife. Oswald is my age, a hard-working employee at a major company. Now retired, thanks to Oswald's efforts, we can live comfortably without any inconvenience. I'm nothing but grateful. Our eldest son, Lucas, and our second son, Cooper, moved away for jobs, but Oswald and I have been living happily together. I always thought our peaceful days with gentle Oswald would continue forever. Then suddenly, we got a call from Lucas. He was being transferred to work in this area. It's a great opportunity to live near home, he said. He hadn't shown much concern for us before, so this sudden interest was surprising. When I asked, Lucas proudly said, I'm 36 now, Mom. You and Dad are 70, right? I haven't shown you my kids. I thought it'd be a form of filial piety to live nearby. That's unnecessary, I said. Despite my words, I couldn't help but smile, touched by Lucas's thoughtfulness. Then, I remembered that a new condominium had been built nearby. If I recall correctly, there were still vacancies, looking for occupants. After I mentioned this, Lucas, pleased, said, A new build is a sure bet. We'll go for that. But we should check with Stephanie first. Living right next to the in-laws might not sit well with her, right? Stephanie seemed like the type who could handle herself well. Since quitting her job upon getting married, she had switched to working from home, earning a part-time income. Our relationship had been good, possibly because we hadn't seen each other much. Most daughters-in-law would dislike the idea of moving next to their in-laws. However, Lucas's response was unexpected. Actually, it was Stephanie who suggested it. When the transfer was decided, she proposed living near home. This surprised and pleased me. Honestly, I thought Stephanie and I didn't get along well. I'm laid back, which some might find annoyingly slow. Stephanie, efficient and the opposite type. And I have always tried not to be overbearing or sarcastic as a mother-in-law, though I worried she didn't think well of me. Lucas's suggestion blew away those concerns. That's great. Discuss it with Stephanie and let me know what you decide. Will do. Eventually, the eldest son and his wife did a walkthrough of the condo, and it seemed Stephanie agreed as they moved in the next month. Moving is tough. How about joining us for dinner? Oswald and I planned to help with the move, but being elderly and with movers around, our son and daughter-in-law declined. Instead, I thought offering dinner might be a way to help, so I approached them after the movers left. That sounds great. Lucas was enthusiastic, unlike Stephanie, who seemed a bit down. Maybe suggesting dinner with the in-laws was too much right after moving. I might have overstepped. I quickly added, Sorry, you must be tired. Maybe we should plan it for another time. Lucas, all set to go out, made a face. Come on, let's go. It's a special occasion and I'm already hungry. Hey, Lucas. Remember to consider Stephanie's feelings too. As I was about to say this, Stephanie looked at me. I want to eat sushi. Is that okay? What? I was taken aback for a moment, but then I answered with a smile. Yes, of course. Then, I'll take you up on that offer. Stephanie took out her smartphone and started making a reservation at the restaurant. I've been wanting to try this sushi place I saw on social media. It seemed a bit pricey, so this is perfect. Stephanie cheerfully told Lucas. Was she implying that it was better to go on someone else's dime because it was expensive? Though it was a housewarming gift and money wasn't an issue, I felt conflicted. However, I couldn't voice these thoughts, and we all got into Lucas's car. Oswald sitting next to me had a complicated look on his face too. Delicious. I'm glad. Eat as much as you like. It was our first time at this sushi restaurant, but the taste was exceptional, and it was a good choice. Both Oswald and I were satisfied, and the eldest son and his wife kept eating more and more. Pricey, but worth it. I couldn't come here on my own dime. We should come again. Stephanie glanced at us as she stuffed herself with tuna. It was nice to see her enjoying the food, and I didn't mind bringing them again. However, the look in her eyes and the way she spoke somehow didn't sit well with me. Of course, we paid the bill in full. The eldest son and his wife, having filled their stomachs, didn't even say thank you. Just stuffed. Ate too much. They laughed. For a few days afterward, we didn't see the eldest son and his wife, nor did we communicate much. I started to worry, but no news is good news. Oswald reassured me. Then, one day, a month after the eldest son and his wife moved in, they came to visit. Finished work early. Let's go out for dinner. We're off tomorrow. Oh, that sounds nice. I haven't started cooking yet. Where shall we go? As we were thinking of a place, Stephanie, like before, held out her smartphone. Let's go here. She pointed to a barbecue restaurant about an hour's drive away. It was a bit of a distance. Spending 2 hours just for a meal seemed excessive. Isn't that a bit far? I tried to decline gently, but Stephanie wouldn't have it. I've been wanting to go there too. Lucas will drive. You just have to sit back. So it's fine, right? Overwhelmed by her insistence, we agreed. The outing unfolded just like the sushi restaurant visit. The eldest son and his wife ordered to their heart's content and ate voraciously. Due to our age, Oswald and I couldn't eat much barbecue. By the time we ate and returned home, it was past 9 p.m. Usually, we'd be preparing for bed at this time. I wanted to take a quick shower and lie down. After thanking Lucas for driving, well then, I headed towards the house. Surprisingly, the eldest son and his wife followed us. What's up? Need something? Stephanie's interested in our garden, Lucas explained. There's a separate building, right? I heard from Lucas yesterday. I thought I'd take a look for future reference. Indeed, our home has a separate building in the garden. But now, it's mostly used as a storage shed and barely utilized. I wondered why they suddenly took an interest. The eldest son and his wife walked into the garden. Reluctantly, I showed them around briefly. It's dark, and we're tired. So I sent them home early. The eldest son and his wife left without further fuss. They've been to our house many times before, so this sudden interest puzzled me. I had questions about their behavior, but the need for sleep prevailed, and I rushed to the shower room, stopping my ponderings. My eldest son and his wife continued to invite us out to eat regularly. While the gesture was appreciated every time, the restaurant was Stephanie's choice, slightly pricier than usual. And of course, we always footed the bill. It might seem stingy, but gradually, I became less enthusiastic about dining out with the eldest son and his wife. They weren't there to enjoy a leisurely meal and conversation, they just ate until they were full. Though they had suggested stopping by our place after the barbecue restaurant outing. They hadn't shown any interest in coming over since then. It felt as if we were just there to provide them with money for their meals. Even Oswald, who is usually generous with money, had a bitter expression. I wish they would at least say thank you. Right. Not even a word of thanks. It's not enjoyable to eat out feeling this way. I decided to decline the next time we were invited. Perhaps they sensed my feelings because the invitations from the eldest son and his wife suddenly stopped. I felt a bit relieved, but then one day, about a month later, while updating the household budget, I was startled. What's this? It's easy to see why our dining out expenses were up last month. We had many meals out with our eldest son and his wife, so it's not hard to imagine. The problem lay in a completely unrelated category. The electricity bill is $1,100? Our home is all electric, and it's winter now. Given that this year has been colder than usual, I understand that heating costs would be higher. But this increase is just too much. Even at its highest, it's never been more than $300. And now it's suddenly $1,100. It makes me wonder if electricity can leak somewhere, like a burst water pipe can cause a leak. When I brought this up with Oswald, he seemed to ponder for a moment. Should we talk to the electric company? But I'd feel terrible if it turns out to just be us using too much. I was perplexed, but Oswald seemed unusually calm. Then, with a smile, he suggested something. Maybe we should just turn off the breaker at night. Just at night? I wondered if it was meant to save money. But doing something like that seemed inconvenient and unlikely to significantly lower our suddenly spiked electric bill. However, knowing Oswald, there must be a reason behind it. After decades together, if he thinks it's worth a try, then it probably is. All right, let's give it a shot. At my words, Oswald nodded with a smile. We usually bundle up and don't use the heating. When we sleep to avoid waking up to a dried-out atmosphere from the air conditioning. So, while the idea seemed inconvenient at first, upon reconsideration, it didn't seem like it would be too troublesome after all. The only issue might be if I need to use the bathroom in the middle of the night. What do we do then? Use a flashlight? It'll probably be fine. It won't take that long. Oswald looked somewhat sad for some reason. Turning off the breaker seemed like too simple a solution for whatever problem we were facing. Despite my questions, Oswald didn't provide an answer. And so, from that night on, Oswald and I decided to turn off the breaker once we were ready for bed. The room was silent and pitch black. It felt a bit strange since we usually sleep with a night light. I wonder what this will solve. I murmured quietly and closed my eyes. Morning came without incident. It was inconvenient, sure, but would something like this really resolve our issue? Though curious, we continued our routine of turning off the breaker each night. Then, one day, something changed. As usual, after turning off the breaker and getting into bed, I began to drift off to sleep. Just as I thought I might fall asleep, my smartphone suddenly started ringing loudly. Flashes of light reflected off the walls of the room. Who could be calling at this hour? I was surprised and confused, but the phone stopped ringing. Then it started again almost immediately. The smartphone was a bit away, and the room was completely dark. By the time I managed to find it, guided by its light, there were more than 10 missed calls. All of them were from Stephanie. Why would Stephanie call? As I picked it up, the phone vibrated again in my hand. I answered immediately. Hello? Michelle? Enough is enough. What's going on over there? Before I could even speak, Stephanie sounded very agitated. What do you mean? It's your electricity. It's been going out at night for the past few days, hasn't it? I talked to Lucas, and he said the condos aren't experiencing any outages. It's weird that only your house is losing power. Did you do something? Stephanie interrogated me rapidly, as if accusing us. Her claims were bizarre, especially since it was strange how she knew about our electricity usage. How do you know our electricity is going out? What? We've only used a night light during these hours before. There are curtains, so practically no light should be leaking outside. Unless someone was paying very close attention, they wouldn't notice our recent lack of electricity. And what do you mean you talked to Lucas? Aren't you at the condo? Where are you? There was no reply from the other end. Stephanie? Please turn the electricity back on quickly. Stephanie's voice was shaking as if she was disturbed by something. With that, the call was ended. What does that mean? I looked over at Oswald next to me, who was also on the phone with someone. Who are you calling? I asked, and he said he was calling Lucas. Then, Oswald called Lucas over. As soon as Lucas arrived, he was surprised by the darkness of our home. Greeting him at the entrance, only the street lights illuminated us. Why aren't the lights on? I tried to explain, but Oswald gestured for me to stop. More importantly, do you know where Stephanie is? What? Even in the dim light, it was clear that Lucas was unsettled. Lucas, talk to us. Seemingly resigned by Oswald's stern voice, Lucas began to speak in a soft voice. Actually, I had a fight with Stephanie a while back, and she hasn't come back home. They've been in contact through social media and phone calls, but haven't seen each other face to face. So where is Stephanie? She works from home, so she doesn't have many places to go during the day, right? Isn't she in trouble? It seems she took her computer with her, so she should be fine. Probably staying at a friend's house or something. Lucas seemed hesitant to ask for her exact location, fearing it would seem like admitting defeat. You two are married, and yet. I was exasperated when another call from Stephanie came in. As soon as I answered, her voice, louder than before, filled my ear. Is the electricity still not back? I can't stand it anymore. If you don't know what's causing it, you better call a professional or something. Why was she so fixated on our electricity? Even I could somewhat understand the answer to that by now. In other words, Stephanie would be in trouble without our electricity. Looking at Oswald, he slowly nodded. We went back to the bathroom where the breaker was, turned it back on, and quickly pressed the hallway light switch before heading back to the entrance, led by Oswald, to a certain location. It seemed the electricity was restored. Through the still connected phone, I could sense Stephanie's sigh of relief. Stephanie, are you by any chance near us right now? What? Like, for example, in a separate building. At that moment, I vigorously opened the door to the annex. The scene that greeted me as I opened the door was shocking. It was a completely different place from the annex I remembered. A respectable living space had been created by cleverly arranging shelves and tables in the cramped space. There was even a small refrigerator. And at the center of all this, Stephanie stood frozen, staring at us wide-eyed. Stephanie opened and closed her mouth, trying to say something but seemingly too shocked to speak. Lucas, with a similar expression, managed to speak up. Stephanie, Why are you here? How long have you been here?
Lucas, why are you here?
Both of them asked questions but provided no answers to each other. In the awkward silence, only the loud noise of the air conditioner stood out. Hearing that noise, Oswald and I looked at each other and then back at the air conditioner.
The sudden spike in our electricity bill was because of this.
Seems like it. Looking around, we saw a humidifier, a kettle, and other electrical appliances that would likely increase the electricity bill. None of which were originally there. Presumably, Stephanie had brought them in. I was surprised that Oswald had noticed, and when I asked him how he knew, he gave a wry smile and explained. Stephanie was unusually interested in this place before. There were other reasons, but it's rare for the electricity bill to spike that much all at once. Even if someone was stealing electricity from an external outlet. It seemed he thought it wouldn't be impossible if one lived without worrying about the electricity bill at all. In fact, Stephanie had been living in this annex.
So the electricity going out was intentional? That's terrible. It was so cold, and I was in the middle of work.
Stephanie.
And to think you called Lucas over as well, you both are too sly. Stephanie.
After calling her name more firmly, Stephanie slightly shook her shoulders and finally looked at us. The slight panic on her face indicated she knew she had done something wrong. I heard from Lucas just now that you two had been fighting. How long have you been staying here?
About a month, I guess.
That long? As Oswald and I looked on with disbelief, Stephanie's face turned a bit red, and she raised her voice.
Maybe it was wrong of me to just move in without asking. But come on, we're family.
Even if we're family, it's not okay for you to just barge in and live here without permission.
If Lucas had just apologized sooner, none of this would have happened.
When Stephanie said this looking at Lucas.
What did you say?
He glared back at her.
I didn't want to live in such a cramped space, you know.
Instead of apologizing, Stephanie became defiant, snorting and crossing her arms. Don't use your marital spat as an excuse. Anyway, you're going to have to take responsibility. Speaking sternly on purpose, Stephanie reacted with a slightly scared look.
Responsibility?
Yes. The electricity bill has skyrocketed because of you living here. You'll have to pay the difference. Stephanie burst out laughing.
The electricity bill? Michelle, for someone who's well off, you're quite stingy, aren't you? Fine, I'll pay it. How much is it?
The electricity bill was $1,100. Our usual bill for this time of year was $300. So, the difference was $800. $800. I said clearly, and Stephanie looked taken aback.
You're kidding, right? The electricity bill? That can't be right.
It's not a joke. Last month's bill was $1,100. The difference from our usual expense is $800. Stephanie glared at us with a sharp look, and then started saying something outrageous.
You guys should pay me money.
Why would we do that? Stephanie put forth her illogical reasoning.
Because you intentionally turned off the breaker, my work was interrupted, you know? You have no idea how much trouble I've been in these past few days.
That's no reason for us to pay you.
How is that fair? Why should I be the only one to pay such a high amount?
Despite having taken advantage of someone else's property without permission. Without a word of apology or any sign of remorse, Stephanie remained defiant. Oswald, who had been silent until now, finally spoke up to Stephanie.
Paying for what you've used is only natural. Even a child understands that.
Stephanie fell silent at Oswald's unusually stern tone. Then, Oswald, with a sigh, handed something over.
Lucas, you really should have been more discerning about women.
With a bit of sarcasm, he presented a few photographs. Looking at them, the color drained from Stephanie's face. This. Stephanie hurriedly tried to collect the photos, but it was too late. Lucas and I had already seen them clearly. The photos showed Stephanie cozily close to a young man.
Stephanie! What is this? You accuse me of cheating, and now it turns out you've been cheating?
It seemed this was the root of their argument. Stephanie's face contorted.
Who is this guy? It's not like that. He's just a friend. Well, not really just a friend, but...
The photos suggested a much closer relationship than just friends. Furthermore, it was clear from the background of the photos that their meetings took place in this annex. Oswald sighed deeply and explained to me. Apparently, Oswald had purposefully turned off the breaker at night for this reason. He had realized a while ago that Stephanie had been living here, and had already brought a man into the annex when he first noticed. He was planning to inform Lucas, but was struggling with how and when to present the evidence he had gathered. It was when the electricity bill suddenly spiked that I connected the dots. But why go through the indirect method of turning off the breaker at night?
It was because Stephanie was always bringing men over at night. I certainly didn't want to barge in on them in the midst of an affair.
Plus, Oswald looked coldly at Stephanie.
I had hoped that Stephanie would reflect on her actions and come forward herself.
By overtly turning off the breaker and making life inconvenient, he had hoped to push her back to Lucas. It was very much like Oswald.
But I never imagined she'd brazenly call us. Did she not think it would backfire on her?
Stephanie trembled with her head down, obviously not expecting everything to be revealed. Lucas, with his head in his hands, firmly told Stephanie,
"Let's get a divorce."
Stephanie looked up sharply.
Why? It's obvious. How can I continue living with a woman who moved into my parents' house without permission and cheated on me? Wait a minute.
Stephanie tried to cling to Lucas but was pushed away. Oswald glared at her sharply. Seeing no recourse, she turned to me, trying to win me over with a flattering tone.
Michelle, you understand, right? As a woman, the feeling of being swayed by another man?
When she tried to grab my shoulder, I quickly stepped back, and Stephanie, losing her balance, fell face first to the ground. Shaking with anger, I looked down at her.
As a woman, I cannot understand someone as senseless as you. I am committed to Oswald alone. I don't want to be lumped in with someone as selfish as you.
Such. Stephanie, seeming to have scraped her nose and cheek, uttered a choked sob.
You'll have to make amends for moving in without permission and for cheating. Both to us and to Lucas.
Under the glares of the three of us, Stephanie lay crying on the ground. Afterwards, Lucas and Stephanie got divorced. The man she cheated with was unemployed, so it was quite a struggle to get him to pay compensation. But Stephanie is likely facing much bigger struggles ahead. Although she works, her income is only part-time, and now she's burdened with debt from the compensation. Finding a new place to live is going to be tough. Lucas, too, showed signs of remorse. Later, he apologized and revealed a new fact. It was Stephanie's idea to move next to our house, saying,
Lucas, your family is wealthy, so let's live near them and have a good time.
Lucas had easily agreed to this and was the one proposing regular meals at our place. He promised that, while he may come over for meals in the future, he wouldn't ask for unnecessarily expensive things. Oswald and I reflected on not checking the annex more thoroughly. We hadn't even locked it, thinking it was secure within our property. We planned to regularly organize and utilize the space from now on. While Stephanie's actions were shocking, This incident has deepened the bond between Oswald and me. We hope to continue supporting each other as a couple.
I'll make you happy for my late wife and son. What?
I almost blurted out. I wondered whose wife and son he was declaring dead. Eavesdropping further, Thomas uttered something even more unbelievable.
You're all I have left after losing everything. Will you marry me?
I could never forgive Thomas for pretending that his wife and son were dead. To think he would go as far as lying and proposing to such a young woman. Of course, I couldn't just stay silent. When I looked at Brian, he met my gaze and nodded. Then, we stood up and approached Thomas.
Hello, your dead former family here. We've come back from the afterlife just for you, Dad.
Thomas's eyes widened in shock at our sudden appearance. It was from there that Brian and I began our revenge on Thomas. My name is Chloe. I'm a 48-year-old housewife and have been married for 24 years. I grew up as an only child in a family where both my parents were high school teachers. Although my grandmother took care of me when I was little, I spent a lot of time alone after she passed away when I was in middle school. My parents were often away from home even during summer breaks and other long vacations, as my dad coached baseball and my mom coached volleyball. Seeing my friends' moms at home being housewives or working part-time and being home in the evenings made me envious. So, I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom when I got married and had kids instead of being out at work. Being a quiet person, I never had a boyfriend until I graduated from college. My mom got worried for me, so she introduced me to a young male teacher who was a colleague of hers shortly after I graduated from college. His name was Thomas Jones. He had a nice figure, and he was handsome. According to my mom, he was sociable and well-liked by the students. He seemed too good for someone quiet and plain like me. But Thomas, respecting my mom as a more experienced teacher, took our relationship seriously. A year after we met, Thomas and I got married. Having felt lonely as a child, I told Thomas that I wanted to focus on our family instead of work. He agreed, saying he had felt the same as his parents both worked. He wanted me to stay at home. Thomas and I shared the same values. I thought we could build a happy home together. However, Thomas, being sociable, valued his relationships with colleagues and students. That's a good thing, but he often neglected life at home. We rarely spoke to each other, and when we did, it was only when he had something he needed me to do.
I'm glad that you became a housewife to take care of this household, Chloe. I can rely on you for anything.
Thomas always flattered me like this, leaving everything to me, even things he could do himself. But hearing this made me feel needed, and I tried to take it positively. I suppose it would have been better to get mad at him and say,
I'm not just a housekeeper, you know.
On top of that, since the beginning of our marriage, he would never be home at night during the weekends. He would usually be out drinking with his colleagues or his former students. Indeed, I had heard from my parents that many teachers would drink to relieve their stress. But my parents were different. My mom didn't drink, and my dad rarely went out for a drink out of consideration for my mom. I realized some teachers really enjoyed their drinks seeing Thomas's lifestyle. But I kept quiet at first because it didn't affect our living costs. However, Thomas still kept it up even after our child was born, so I got increasingly unhappy about it. Hey, Thomas.
I get that socializing is important, but can't you say no every now and then?
I had kept quiet until then, but I couldn't take it anymore. Thomas looked puzzled and responded, What? Why are you asking this now? You never mentioned it before.
Well, my parents told me that teachers have a lot of socializing to do. But I want you to value your time at home too, for Brian's sake.
I said this for the sake of my son Brian, but Thomas furrowed his brow as if he was offended.
Look, both of your parents are teachers, right? So, if they come across any problems at work, they can talk to each other about it. But I don't have that, so going out with other teachers for drinks is my only option.
Thomas made his point as a teacher. Hearing that made me feel helpless since I didn't work, and it left me feeling lonely. Regardless of how I felt, it must have been lonely for our son, Brian, to have his dad gone every weekend. All I want is for Thomas to genuinely connect with Brian. But Thomas didn't even try to understand my feelings. Despite having these thoughts, I couldn't say anything back to him. Even though I found this frustrating, there was nothing I could do about it, and a rift gradually developed between us. However, our life wasn't entirely lonely. Thomas was well liked by his students, and those who had already graduated and are now working often came to visit him. In particular, 2 of his students, who were the class clowns, have been visiting us frequently in the past 5 to 6 years. Their names are Miller and Martin. They would still come over on their days off even after graduating from college and getting a job. Thanks to them, Thomas has been going out less over the past few years. Brian, now in his senior year in college, has become quite close to them, perhaps because they are around the same age. I feel kind of happy too when they come to visit us with their bright and friendly personalities. They always looked out for me and would bring over cakes and such. Today, they brought a cake over on their day off. But Thomas had been out since the morning. "I'm sorry, guys. My husband has been out since last night and hasn't returned yet." They looked a bit awkward when I greeted them at the door. Perhaps they felt bad for visiting when Thomas was away. "No, we're sorry for bothering you when Mr. Jones isn't here." "But, is Brian here?" "Brian?" "Yes, he's here." Hearing their voices, Brian came out of his room. In fact, he was getting ready to go out as if he had been waiting for the 2 of them to come. "Mom, I'm going out with the guys for a bit." Brian left with a somewhat burdened expression, along with the other 2. It seemed like they had something they didn't want me to hear. Well, boys their age might have concerns they can't share with their mothers. I watched them leave with a sense of unease but didn't say anything. Later, I passed by Brian's room, and I noticed his phone ringing. It's rare for Brian to forget his phone. I went into his room to pick it up. And without intending to, I touched the screen which wasn't locked and caught my breath. It was a message thread from Miller. He sent a picture showing Thomas with his arm around a young woman entering a hotel. The message read, "I don't want to believe it, but the woman with Mr. Jones seems to be from a club. I secretly followed them after they left." Brian replied, "I'll keep quiet because Mom would be shocked if she finds out." That's probably why they came to see Brian. Or maybe they hoped to figure out if Thomas had returned. Anyway, my mind went into a panic. The thought of Thomas cheating. I had an urge to confront him directly, but I hesitated. Brian was in the middle of job hunting, so I didn't want to trouble him with our marital problems. So, I decided to pretend I hadn't seen the message for now. When Brian returned, he still looked troubled. I greeted him, trying to appear calm. Then Thomas came home. He looked puzzled at Brian and I. "What's up? You both look so out of it." An awkward silence filled the air. Brian must have been careful that I don't find out. For a while, Brian and I continued to act as if nothing was amiss when Thomas was around. Months passed, and soon it was almost Christmas. We planned to spend Christmas Eve as a family, celebrating Brian getting a job. However, I was still troubled by Thomas's suspected infidelity and couldn't bring myself to speak up. Then, Thomas said something. "I'll come home late for a year-end party on the 24th of this month, so I won't need dinner." It makes sense that there would be a party on that day. But given the date, I couldn't help but wonder if he was lying. Even so, I couldn't confront him about it, so for the time being, I just replied, "Yes." Lately, I haven't had a proper conversation with Thomas, and I feel suffocated every day. Seeing me constantly like this, Brian made a thoughtful gesture for me. "Mom. Actually, I got 2 dinner vouchers for a hotel where Miller's relative works. It's for the 24th, but let's go together." "Really? You want to take me out for dinner? Don't you have someone else you want to go with?" I asked Brian shyly in reply to his invitation, but Brian answered as if he was trying hard to come up with an excuse.
No, Miller and Martin seem to have plans that day. And my friends from school said they'd be spending it with their girlfriends.
I decided to accept the invitation because Brian was concerned about my loneliness. It's been years since I've gone out for a meal with Brian. And it's at a very fancy hotel, so I thought I might dress up a bit. I was looking forward to the day with such excitement, but I never imagined I would encounter such misfortune on that day. And then, on the night of the 24th, Brian and I went to the hotel for dinner. It was more luxurious than I had imagined, and I almost faltered for a moment. I nervously entered the restaurant on the top floor of the hotel and was led to our table by a waiter. It felt more like a place where couples come to propose than a mother and son dining together. Looking around, there were indeed many young couples. In particular, the couple sitting by the window with the woman in very flashy makeup and clothes, and I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw the man sitting opposite the woman. He was sitting with his back to us, so I didn't realize it at first, but the man was Thomas. Thomas was dressed in a formal suit like I had never seen before. It was probably either newly bought for this occasion or rented. I was frozen and couldn't move from the spot. I think Brian hadn't realized Thomas was there yet, so I tried to act calm. However, since our seats were close, I could clearly hear Thomas's voice.
"I'll make you happy for my late wife and son." "What?"
I almost blurted out. I wondered whose wife and son he was declaring dead. Eavesdropping further, Thomas uttered something even more unbelievable.
"You're all I have left after losing everything. Will you marry me?" "Me? Really? I'm so happy."
The seat was by a large window offering a panoramic night view of the city. She must have been deeply moved by being proposed to in such a romantic atmosphere. Brian, sitting opposite of me, seemed to realize it was his dad's voice and turned around quickly.
"Brian, wait."
I hurriedly stopped Brian from seeing Thomas's face behind us. But it seemed Brian already realized the man proposing to the unknown woman was his dad. Brian and I silently eavesdropped. Thomas's proposal went on.
"You're the best. After losing my wife and son, I had lost the will to live, but thanks to you, the future seems bright." "Really? You rely on me that much?" "Of course. I'm even thankful to my deceased family because I got to meet you."
Thomas took something out of his pocket with sweet words. It appeared to be an engagement ring. It looked much more expensive than the one he gave me. I could never forgive Thomas for pretending that his wife and son were dead. To think he would go as far as lying and proposing to such a young woman. Of course, I couldn't just stay silent. When I looked at Brian, he met my gaze and nodded. Then, we stood up and approached Thomas.
"Hello, your dead former family here. We've come back from the afterlife just for you, Dad."
Thomas's eyes widened in shock at our sudden appearance. The mistress, not understanding what was going on, looked surprised.
"Who's this woman? And the mama's boy? Do you know them, Thomas?"
"Who knows?
They're total strangers. Just some troublemakers, I guess. Just ignore them."
Thomas tried to brush it off, but sweat was trickling down his forehead. The woman glared at us, thinking that Brian and I were just here to cause trouble.
"Hey, what's your problem, lady? You can't harass us like this just because you're jealous of our happiness." "It's not harassment.
You're being deceived.
This man is Thomas.
He's my husband."
"Oh, sure, the name matches, but does that prove he's your husband? If you're going to make baseless accusations, I'll call the police."
"We have proof right here," Brian said and took an envelope out of his bag. Inside was our marriage certificate. Arya, the mistress, grabbed it and showed it to Thomas.
"What's this about, Thomas? You said you had lost your wife and child."
Confronted by Arya, Thomas shrunk back, unable to say anything. That was when I wondered. Why had Brian brought something like that? Noticing my puzzled look, Brian seemed to catch on to my question. Then, looking at Thomas, he said, "Dad, I've known for a while now that you've been cheating on Mom with this woman. And I found out you'd be meeting her here today."
What are you talking about?
Thomas still tried to play dumb at this point. What an awfully stubborn man.
Ha!
Brian scoffed at those words. "There's no escaping it now, Dad. I've got the whole proposal recorded on my phone."
What are you talking about?
"You don't have one on you right now. If you're wondering where it is, the attorney sitting over there has it." Brian pointed to a seat where Martin and a man around 50 were seated. Miller emerged from the back of the restaurant. It seemed like they had planned this together in advance to confront Thomas about his affair. I was surprised Brian had orchestrated this. Then, the man with Martin approached us. "Hello, I'm Martin's father. I hear that you have always been very kind to my son."
Oh, Martin's father. It's been a long time.
"Well, I believe this is actually the first time seeing you in person, sir. I'm ashamed to say I've left everything concerning my son's school to my wife."
Are you here for dinner with your family today?
Thomas seemed puzzled to find Martin and his father at such a place. Then Martin, sitting next to his dad, spoke up. "I asked him to be here with me, sir. My father's a lawyer. When I told him I had something I wanted him to look into, he had a friend investigate and found out you'd be here today with your mistress." Thomas looked surprised when he heard that Martin's father was a lawyer and that he was being investigated. Naturally, his guilty conscience must have made him react that way. I had no idea they had gone as far as to involve an attorney and a private investigator. Thomas glared at me sharply.
Chloe, what is this all about? I have no idea either. Mom has nothing to do with this, Dad. We're the ones who planned everything.
Hearing these unexpected words from Brian, Thomas's eyes widened even more, and he froze in place. I wondered why Brian would go to such lengths. Then, Brian explained how he came to know about Thomas's affair through a message from Miller. Brian had been talking with Miller and Martin about what he could do without me finding out. But the three of them couldn't find a solution on their own, so Martin talked to his father, who is a lawyer. Even though it was a personal request, Martin's father agreed to help and had a private investigator look into Thomas's surroundings. One of Miller's relatives works at the restaurant where Thomas was meeting his mistress that day. They provided the dinner tickets to stake out Thomas.
I wasn't sure whether to bring Mom along, but I wanted to clear things up. I couldn't stand the thought of you and Dad just pretending to be a couple anymore. I couldn't bear it.
So, that's why Brian invited me here. I thought Brian was still a child. Yet, he had been thinking about his parents this much. I was truly surprised to see how grown-up Brian had become before I knew it. As I was lost in thought, Martin suddenly looked at Thomas and made a shocking statement. "Mr. Jones, my father and his friend found that Arya is actually Mia, who was in the same class as Miller and me in our freshman year."
What? Her name is Arya. It even says so on her business card.
That must be a pseudonym for the club. Don't you remember Mia, who dropped out in December of our freshman year? That's her. Upon hearing this from Martin, Thomas looked at the woman named Arya.
Arya? You're that girl, Mia, from back then. What are you talking about? Who's Mia? I don't know any Mia.
Arya was desperately denying it, but she seemed to be panicking. Seeing Arya like this, Martin showed us a photo on his phone. A friend of mine went to the same middle school as Mia, and he showed me the graduation album. I took a photo of Mia's picture with my phone. Look at the large mole under the left eye. Isn't it the same as yours? Martin pointed at Arya's face. Arya covered the area under her eye with her hand, but it was too late. She gave up and smiled wryly.
If I'm caught, so be it. Yes, I'm Mia, the one who couldn't stand being in Mr. Jones's class during my freshman year of high school. The Mia who was driven out of school because of such an awful homeroom teacher.
The room went silent at Arya's drastic change in demeanor. What was she plotting by getting close to Thomas? As I pondered this, Thomas questioned Arya before I could.
Driven out of school because of me? What do you mean? You probably don't remember. To you, I was just a mere shadow.
Arya began to recount her time back then. She couldn't fit in with the class and was isolated since her first days of school. She also struggled with her studies. She tried to consult with Thomas, her homeroom teacher, who never took her seriously. Although Thomas was well liked by his students, he tended to be favored by the popular ones. So, it was quite possible that, on the flip side, he didn't pay as much attention to the shy, quiet students who didn't stand out. Just as he had been neglecting me at home. I found myself feeling a bit sympathetic towards Arya, even though she was the one Thomas was cheating on me with. Listening to her story, Martin's father placed his hand on her shoulder as she tearfully recounted her high school days.
I understand your pain. But why did you decide to date Mr. Jones without revealing your true identity?
Arya answered, wiping her tears away with her hand. I wanted to get back at him. I thought making him cheat on his wife would destroy his family. He happened to come to my club as a customer, so I coaxed him into picking me. He didn't know who I was, and I thought if his wife found out he was cheating on her with a girl from the club, she would divorce him. While I felt sympathy for Arya, I felt that her plan was over the top. Cheating is cheating, no matter the reason. Thomas, who had been close to Arya until moments ago, now looked at her with suspicion.
You played with my feelings for such a reason? What about my feelings?
Thomas exclaimed as if he was the victim. I couldn't stand his self-centered attitude and couldn't keep quiet any longer.
Enough! Playing the victim now? Cheating is cheating, isn't it? I've known about it all along.
My sudden outburst caused a stir around us.
What's the matter, Chloe? You're not acting like yourself. I've been keeping it to myself until now. Disappearing every weekend with friends or whatever, and now cheating? I will never forgive you.
I let out all the feelings I had been bottling up inside. Thomas seemed unaffected, showing no signs of remorse.
I was bored at home because you wouldn't talk much. So, I ended up accepting invitations from my colleagues or taking my students out for a drink when they asked me for advice. I'm a teacher, after all. It's not my fault. So what? Both my parents were high school teachers, and they cared for my family. You're just making an excuse. It would have been great if you were a teacher too, but anyway, I felt uncomfortable being with a wife like you with nothing to talk about. So. Enough, Dad. You're embarrassing us.
Brian's blow silenced Thomas immediately. Martin's father, witnessing the whole scene, tried to calm Thomas down.
Mr. Jones, I heard from my son and my late wife that you are a good teacher. However, family is irreplaceable. I lost my wife 2 years ago, but you have such a wonderful wife. Please cherish the time with your family from now on. No, that won't be necessary. Let's end this. I've already talked to my parents, and they said I can come back home anytime.
I felt bad for interrupting the kind words offered to me, but I needed to make my feelings clear. Thomas looked panic-stricken.
What? What about me? I wanted to split up too, but I was deceived by the person I was planning to remarry. Deceived? You were the one lying about your wife and child being dead.
As we were arguing, Martin's father stepped in.
Looks like it would be best to take this to court. Since it was the husband who was having an affair, the wife can claim alimony in the trial.
I will also take responsibility and pay the alimony. Arya, who had been silent until now, seemed to realize the gravity of her actions and offered to pay. Thomas was cornered and had no way out. After the trial, the divorce was finalized. Of course, I was able to claim alimony from Thomas. Arya, or rather, Mia, offered to pay alimony as well, but I declined. I couldn't forgive her for the affair, but she seemed genuinely remorseful. Since Thomas also had a part in her losing her job, I decided to settle things amicably with her. Thomas complained that it was unfair he was the only one paying alimony. He shows zero signs of remorse. Anyway, now that the divorce is finalized, I don't care about Thomas anymore. Later, I heard from Martin and his father that Thomas's affair with a student and our divorce became a rumor throughout the school. The rumor spread quickly among the parents, leading to a flood of complaints to the school. This led to Thomas losing the trust of his students and their parents, forcing him to resign. He tried to find another place to work, but few schools in his area were willing to accept him due to his bad reputation. The only school that offered him a position was located far in the countryside. But Thomas, who had enjoyed popularity, refused, saying he didn't want to be in such an unpopular area. Struggling to find employment and falling behind on rent, he was kicked out of his apartment by the landlord. With nowhere to go, Thomas then attempted to move in with Miller, who was living alone.
"Mr. Jones, please don't destroy the respect I had for you. You look pretty pathetic right now."
He was immediately turned away with those words. His current whereabouts are unknown. After the divorce, I moved back to my parents' home for the time being. Brian, having found a job, started living on his own and is now completely independent. My parents wished Brian had lived with them a bit longer, feeling a bit lonely. However, I too will be leaving my parents' home soon. As a matter of fact, I've hit it off with Martin's father since the divorce fiasco, and I'm getting remarried with him. He's a busy lawyer but always makes time for me. I probably won't be lonely anymore. And Brian is very happy for us. I feel like I've been putting up with things in my life for so long. But I've decided to move on from that. Having little work experience, I decided to try something new and became a clerk in my new husband's office. It takes some getting used to at first, but my husband and the rest of the staff are kind enough to give me training for my job. I feel very happy being with someone I love both personally and professionally. Life has become enjoyable for me. Now, it's time to start a new life for me.
I will make you happy for the rest of your life. Will you marry me?
Of course I will. It was 5 years ago when my husband Trent proposed to me. We were college classmates, joined in the same student club and felt a great compatibility with each other. Naturally, we started dating and then got married. My name is Yolanda. 5 years have passed since our marriage, and I am now 33 years old. I'm still living the married life with Trent, but you've been slacking off lately, haven't you?
What? What are you talking about all of a sudden? What is this I found?
Trent, who had just changed clothes in the closet after coming back home, confronted me with a receipt he found in the trash can of the room. It was a receipt from the lunch I had outside today.
I don't understand what you mean. Whose money do you think you're spending on these lunches? I'm having trouble here, you going out for these expensive lunches every time, especially when you're not working. Don't live luxuriously on my dime.
The happy atmosphere of our newlywed days had faded over the 5 years. Trent started acting like a bossy husband about a year ago. Suddenly, he completely stopped helping around the house.
It's weird for me to be doing housework. Housework is a woman's job. Especially since you're a housewife, I shouldn't be helping you.
With a mean smirk, Trent started making snide remarks. Although I was puzzled at first, I got used to his attitude within half a year. However, he wouldn't give me any answers when I asked why he changed. Yet without any clear reason, Trent just kept on bossing around every day.
But look at the cost of that lunch, it's pretty cheap, right? It's not even $15 per person. I don't think it's expensive enough to be angry about, and it's not like I go every day. Is it bad even once a month?
What?
Just because it's infrequent, you think that makes it okay? Are you kidding me? Whose money do you think this is?
But...
It's not your money. It's my money. So if I say it's a waste, then it's a waste. If you're upset about it, do something about it yourself.
Don't be unreasonable. Besides, you were the one who said I shouldn't work. Isn't that a bit much to say? I kept working even after we got married. But in the second year of our marriage, Trent got transferred to a different department and started working long hours. That's when he asked me to quit my job. He said he wanted me to be at home when he was tired and coming home from work. And so, to fulfill that wish, I quit the job I loved. Women working outside the home never leads to anything good. Quit it, quit it. And if you did work, could you manage household chores too? Impossible, right? It's clear you wouldn't be able to handle it all perfectly. But I don't think it's right to complain like that. However, I had already reached my limit with Trent's attitude. I wondered why he needed to say that far, without any clear reason or cause. And no answers even when I asked him directly. I was thinking that if this continued for life, maintaining our marriage would be difficult. With that way of speaking and your ridiculous attitude, it's really unbelievable. If that's the case, I won't do the housework and will go out instead. I'll take care of my own chores, but you'll have to do your own, Trent. What? Why the hell? Isn't it obvious? There's no way I'll do this being blamed like that. I don't know where you got these ideas, but the days of housework is women's work have already gone. If you're going to keep complaining, then I have my own plans. I began to calmly clear up the dishes in the sink. Usually, when I speak up like this, Trent loses his words and starts mumbling, "No, I didn't mean, But even paying attention to that is tiresome. Ending a marriage isn't something that can be done easily. That's why a part of me still wants to believe that one day things will change. Tossed around by this difficult issue, I kept wondering whether I should cut ties with Trent. Then one day, out of the blue, Trent sent me a message. "Starting next month, I'll take charge of your wallet." I had no idea what he was talking about, but that night, when Trent came home, he started to explain. "Clearly, I can't entrust you with our finances. Starting next month, I'll be managing the money." What? Why all of a sudden? Did something happen? Let's be honest, you've been really extravagant, haven't you? To be frank, I have no idea about the amount you're spending. So, I'll take control of the finances. That way, we won't waste unnecessary money, right? I was bewildered, wondering what he was suddenly talking about. I thought maybe the issue with the lunch before was really bothering him. Look, about that lunch the other day? I've said it many times, but I don't go that often, you know? I can't trust you. What? So, what would make you satisfied? I'll be satisfied if I manage it for the time being. Huh? So, you just want to manage it yourself and you're making up excuses? No. That's not it. I just want to keep track of it. Got any complaints? It's strange. Why should you manage the money I earn by working? I should be the one managing it. Whenever Trent lies or makes a desperate excuse, he always shows a look of annoyance. And right now, he's making those excuses right in front of me. There must be some other reason. Hey, are you hiding something? What? I'm not hiding anything. Well, even if you say it's not good, starting next month I'll be the one managing. Got it? This is a done deal. It's fine to say that, but can you manage it? Trent, you're not exactly frugal. Are you mocking me? I can manage my own salary. Well, your spending money will be just $100 though. Trent, looking very pleased with himself, decides on the amount of money I can freely use and laughs heartily. In the first place, how does he expect me to manage with just $100? He clearly has no understanding of our household finances. And what about the living expenses? At this point, I felt it was best to keep my cool. Oh, so you got $300 and you're calling me stingy? Don't compare me to you. I'm the one who earned that money, so it's only natural. Besides, you can hardly do anything with just $300. It was inconvenient for me. Don't say you decided to take control just for that reason. That's none of your business. You've been leeching off me all this time.
Now, it's time to pay for being such a parasitic woman.
Parasitic, huh?
I never thought I'd be called bad like this. I don't care. Listen, I'm managing the finances from next month. It's decided. Don't complain every time, got it?
Trent fled to the bathroom and took a shower. I was far from convinced, because I felt that Trent was hiding something more. The next day, I tried to uncover the truth. But of course, there was no obvious evidence lying around the house.
It's strange. I felt like he was hinting he needed money, but,
Suddenly, I remembered our savings account. Actually, we had set up this account after getting married. It was intended for emergency expenses. I noticed that the drawer containing the banking card had been slightly opened.
I haven't opened it recently, surely not.
Tentatively, I checked the bank balance online. And there it was, the balance was only $7.
What?
What is this? I was speechless to see that, which should have been well over several $1 million, was almost nothing. That night, I confronted Trent, but the answer I got was unexpected.
What's wrong with me using it? I earned the money. If you don't like it, we can get a divorce, you know?
What do you mean?
This was the account we were saving for emergencies. I can't believe you used it without asking. What did you spend it on?
Trent was unapologetic. Moreover, he boldly claimed it was his money. However, the withdrawn amount was about $6 million. Obviously something was wrong. I was thinking of divorce if he evaded the reasons, but it ended up with him implying divorce first. However, Trent, with a composed attitude, blurted out something outrageous.
Well, it was for my girlfriend. What? I spent it on my girlfriend. Got a problem?
Trent casually admitted to having an affair, with a creepy smile on his face. I was beyond angry and managed to deal with the situation calmly.
She's younger and cuter than you, so I don't mind getting a divorce at all. Oh, really? Well, since you're so openly talking about your affair in front of me, you must be prepared, right?
Then Trent burst out laughing.
Ah ha ha ha. Hilarious. You know, in this world, evidence is everything. Proof? Preparedness? Do you even have that? Sure, I just admitted to having a girlfriend, but do you have any proof of that?
Trent revealed his infidelity, confident that I had no proof. Essentially, without evidence, I couldn't prove his adultery. This meant that no matter what was said, he could deny everything in a crunch since there was no proof.
In the world, you often hear about housewives realizing their husband's infidelity, then getting compensation in divorce court. But reality isn't so sweet. You won't be able to do anything to me and will be divorced. What's that supposed to mean? See? You're starting to understand your position, right? You don't want to be divorced, do you? So just shut up and follow what I say. The reason doesn't matter.
Trent smirked triumphantly at me. I despised Trent from the bottom of my heart, but I knew I had to handle this calmly.
Okay, so I'll be managing the finances from next month. Oh, and I have plans to go on a trip with my friends next weekend. I won't tell you where to avoid being caught. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what you can do with just $100 a month.
Trent then went into the bedroom. After a while, I could hear him talking to someone in the room. It must have been his mistress. On that day, I realized I was betrayed by my husband and my life was being controlled. Or so it seemed. A month later, Trent returned from his trip with his friends, rolling his suitcase.
I'm back! Had a blast. Don't expect any souvenirs from me, obviously. What the, hey, what's this?
Trent probably wanted to flaunt his dominance as he entered the house, with his snide remarks echoing down the hallway. But without paying attention to his voice, I was sitting on the living room sofa, legs crossed. And there, spread out on the floor around me, were all the pieces of evidence of Trent's infidelity, waiting for his return. Photos, investigation reports, WhatsApp conversations, and more. I had laid out all the evidence I had meticulously collected.
Hey, what's this? I thought I'd show you my face one last time before leaving. How about it? This is all the evidence I've been gathering for so long.
I smiled at Trent, who turned pale. He seemed frightened by my gaze. All his earlier bravado had vanished.
Proof? What? How did you? You thought you could boldly cheat because there was no proof, but you were so wrong. I've been collecting this evidence for a year, waiting for this day. A year ago,
I had accidentally seen a ridiculous message of "I love you" on your mobile phone a year ago, which tipped me off about the affair. Since then, I had been discreetly gathering evidence, entrusting it to professionals.
Wait. How did you collect all this evidence? You'd need money to hire a professional. You didn't use my money, did you? I think it's questionable that you keep referring to it as your money, but right after I discovered your affair, I started a data entry job to have my own disposable income. What? I did all this to save up for investigation costs and gather evidence. But the side job ended up being more successful than I thought. Within half a year, I was making as much as an average salaried worker. That's why I could afford to go out for lunch without worry and even hire a professional. Are you serious? I plan to keep doing it. So let's get a divorce. I don't need you anymore.
I stood up from the sofa and was about to leave the room, when Trent grabbed my arm.
Wait. I don't want a divorce.
What? I quickly shook off his grip and glared at him.
Who said it was okay to divorce? Since I have your permission, I'll proceed with the discussion, all right? Wait. I wasn't serious. I just wanted to scare you a bit.
So? I sighed deeply. Just thinking that I married this man made me feel disgusted.
Sorry. I'm really sorry. Please forgive me.
No. I didn't want to hear any more excuses, or see his face or hear his voice. So I just added a single word and left the house. Of course, I had copies of all the evidence scattered on the floor. I had the originals and all the photos. So I deliberately left them scattered as a final parting gift.
Don't go, please. I'm begging you.
I ignored his familiar voice behind me, closed the front door, and went back to my parents' house. 3 days later. Trent, his mistress Yvonne, me and my lawyer arranged to meet. The topics were only compensation in the divorce case and repayment of the squandered savings. I demanded $3 million from Trent and $1.5 million from Yvonne.
Don't joke with me. I will absolutely not pay $1.5 million.
Yvonne came at me, yelling loudly. Trent tried desperately to stop her, but I was not idle enough to deal with these foolish people. Or rather, Trent had no taste in women. A junior from the same company, just because she's fairly good-looking, he got involved with such a woman.
All right, if that's the case, we won't settle out of court. Let's go to trial then. What? A trial? Why?
I became weary of even explaining inside, ready to leave the place. Why do I have to confront such idiocy? And then, I just let out what I was thinking, both in my expression and attitude. Ugh. Ridiculous.
You knew he was married when you got involved with him, right? Don't you realize that's wrong?
How old are you?
You're wrecking someone's family. You should be grateful we're even considering a financial settlement. It'd be wise for you to recognize that you're getting off easy. Use whatever brains you have left. What? I can't stand to hear your excuses. Okay, so no settlement outside of court. I really don't want this to drag out, but it seems I have no choice. We'll settle this in court then. And of course, we'll have to inform your company about the lawsuit caused by your affair, right? Make sure you tell them. Goodbye, you won't get another chance. Wait a moment. Yolanda. Sorry. I'm so sorry. Please don't go to court.
I let out everything I wanted to say all at once. And then, I resolved to take it to court. Not agreeing to an out-of-court settlement and going to trial is common sense in society. The other party is senseless, but maybe they'll understand how terrible their actions were if they suffer the consequences. I thought they deserved to go through that pain. Afterward, Trent tried to contact me numerous times, but I ignored all of it. I shut out all communication and consulted with my lawyer about the divorce trial. The trial began, and both sides had lawyers, but then they sought a settlement. However, I refused it. I already gave you a chance, I said. And then, I won the case. Even though the compensation was reduced, I was really glad to settle everything decisively in court. Following the trial, both of them took voluntary retirement from the company. They felt uncomfortable being whispered the foolish who refused settlement and lost the case. Now, they have returned to their parents' homes, but things didn't work out, and it seems they were driven out of their hometowns. Nobody knows where they are or what they're doing now. And since they haven't tried to contact me, I've been living peacefully. To be safe, I'm considering the idea of moving abroad, for I'm a bit scared of time. I'm thinking it would be nice to live leisurely in a country where the cost of living is fairly reasonable. What is a real family? Is it about being blood related? If that's all it takes to be a family, then I have none. But if someone tells me that's not the case, if there's someone who believes that's not all there is to family, I want to be a family with that person. My name is Melody. At 32, I'm finally getting married and am in the midst of happiness. I met my fiancé Patrick at work, through a certain topic of conversation. After various things, we started dating, and following 2 years of being together, he proposed.
I will definitely make you happy. Let's build a warm family together.
The moment he said that, I couldn't stop crying. I never intended to get married. I, who had no interest in romance, thought my life would be dedicated to my work. Life is unpredictable. But I can't just be swept away by the word marriage. Family meetings, announcements to various people, meetings with the wedding venue, and looking for a new home. The days are dizzyingly busy, but it's not a burden because I'm happy. Everything is so enjoyable. However, life has its ups and downs. There's always someone to ruin your happy moments. One day, on a rare day off, while I was relaxing at home, I had visitors. It was my brother Benjamin and my sister-in-law Lily. I live in my parents' house, and when Benjamin and Lily came, my parents had just gone out, unfortunately. I wish they had contacted me in advance. They said they were nearby and decided to stop by. Well, this is Benjamin's parents' house, so they're free to come whenever they want. But all I can do is serve coffee, you know?
Just seeing your face, so full of happiness because you're getting married, is enough for me.
Saying that, Benjamin patted my head. What's it like to pat the head of your sister, who's over 30? I sometimes wonder, but no matter the age, Benjamin's gentle and warm hand always brings happiness to my heart. Even when I become a grandmother, I'd like to be patted by those wrinkly old hands. Benjamin, still with few wrinkles on his hands or face, is 35. He just married a young woman 10 years his junior last year. For me, Lily is also much younger. Welcome, Lily. When I greet her like this. Thanks. Lily's response is always quite cold. That's just how she is. While Benjamin and I were talking in the entrance for a bit, Lily promptly entered the house and sprawled out on the living room sofa, as usual. Everything as usual. At first, I was amazed, but if this is Lily's normal, it's not for me to comment. If it bothers anyone, Benjamin will say something, so I keep quiet. But there's one behavior that still concerns me. It was when Benjamin stepped away to the bathroom. Hey, Melody. The moment she calls my name, I brace myself, as usual. To me like that, Lily said.
Are you really going to be a housewife after getting married?
At the family meeting of me and Patrick's families, I talked about quitting my job to become a housewife, and Lily knew because she was there. That's right.
Really?
Become unemployed, for real? Unemployed, is that such a strange thing? Being a housewife is hard, too. Our mom is one, and it's an important job, protecting the home. When I say that, she laughs at me as if I'm lecturing or making a joke. That's funny. You probably weren't needed at the company anyway. Becoming unemployed, that's the worst. Lily, you're the same, aren't you? It seems like she looks down on it, but Lily herself is actually a housewife. I come from a wealthy family. I'm the daughter of a company president. It would be strange for someone like me to work, right? Besides, I'm loved by Ben. Ben refers to my brother and Lily's husband, Benjamin. So, is she implying that I'm not loved by my fiancé, Patrick? But that's not the only troubling part. Lily's family runs a business, and she indeed is a president's daughter. I attended the family meeting when Benjamin was getting married. I remember Lily's parents flaunting their flashy jewelry and boasting about their expensive, custom-made suits. But behind the scenes, I know about the complaints of low wages among the employees and the salary cuts for staff while increasing the president's salary. Moreover, Lily, who doesn't actually work, gets paid as an employee. It felt like seeing the dark side of small, family-run businesses. Growing up in such a family, there are many things about Lily that make me wonder where the president's daughter is in her. For starters, stop monopolizing the sofa by sprawling out on it. And what's with rummaging through someone else's fridge and shelves, taking out drinks and snacks? And don't just eat them. That's the chocolate mousse I was hiding. I bought it on my way home from work yesterday and was planning to have it for a snack. I was just helping you not to get any fatter. You should be thankful. Thankful, my foot. I was irritated, but I am the elder one. Getting seriously angry over a younger person's joke would only add to my gray hairs and wrinkles. The best thing is to ignore it. But Lily's audacity doesn't end there. It happened during the crucial wedding dress selection for my wedding. Mom wanted to see it too, so she left work early to meet me, but somehow, Lily was also there. Yikes! An unrefined exclamation slipped from my mouth. I just can't be that tolerant. Sorry, but no. I got married just last year, so I think I can give some good advice. Since you are older, maybe avoid flashy dresses? Maybe just a simple dress would be better? What kind of advice is that? Do you even know the meaning of advice? It's supposed to be helpful. Not at all helpful. I feel like she's out to kill my spirit. For now, ignore Lily, just ignore. If that's impossible, empty my mind. Stay calm, and Lily's presence will become nothing. No way, Melody, a princess line dress wouldn't suit you. That's for young and cute girls like me. Do you even know your age? A mermaid line is a no-go too. It shows the body shape too clearly. That's for someone with a nice body like me. Your figure is just unsightly, you know? And showing your back is a bad idea too. That's for beautiful girls like me to show off their dazzling radiance. Your back would just look gloomy. I can't stay calm anymore. Shut up, you woman. If only I could say, who are you to talk like that? How refreshing that would be. But frankly, it's just too bothersome to argue each point. At first, I casually mentioned it, but she just won't listen. But that doesn't mean I should burst into a fiery rage. It would be bad for the shop staff, and I don't want to ruin the atmosphere. I want to enjoy this. So, I have no choice but to endure. Aiming for emptiness, then giving up, repeating this, I somehow managed to finish choosing the dress. Afterward, the three of us went to a cafe. By then, I was really exhausted. It's great that you found a nice dress, Mom said. I nodded in agreement. The dress was nice, but the person wearing it is a bit iffy, Lily said. Enough. Even Mom frowned at Lily's harsh words. Being mindful of her role as a mother-in-law, Mom rarely argues back with Lily. But perhaps she couldn't bear it any longer. Lily. It's not right to speak about people that way, she admonished her. In that moment. That's terrible. Carol, are you bullying me?
I was just trying to be helpful.
And there it was. It's not like that.
After all, Melody isn't your real daughter. Why support her like she's your own blood?
Lily started saying outrageous things. Mom, looking distressed, fell silent.
She's an adopted daughter, right?
So to me and Ben, she's a complete stranger. A person with no blood relation.
I was just tolerating that and giving grateful advice.
I was speechless. That's right, I'm not her biological daughter. My biological parents died in an accident when I was young, and my current adoptive parents took me in. They gave me as much love as biological parents. Raised by adoptive parents who treated me like their own daughter. My parents and Benjamin, they definitely consider me family. And she dares to say such things to us. I felt the blood drain from my face. But Lily's tirade didn't stop.
I think it's enough that Benjamin married me, a president's daughter. Now might be the time to disown the outsider Melody, right? We would never do that. But my dad says it too. It's shameful to have an adult parasite in the family. Having someone like that in our family is a disgrace. So I think it's fine to cut ties with her when she gets married. How could you say that?
It was rare to see Mom turn red with anger. Looking at me standing there stunned, Lily said.
Well, you'll be leaving this house once you're married. If you're an outsider.
I stopped listening after that. I left some money on the table, stood up, and left the cafe. If I had listened to Lily any longer, I'm sure I would have lashed out at her. I didn't want to cause any trouble with Benjamin over something like that. Despite the irritation, the days leading up to the wedding were still busy. As I was resigning from my job, I spent my days handing over work to my colleagues, and before I knew it, the wedding day arrived.
I'm so nervous.
Patrick, with his gentle smile and reassuring words, stood beside me, trying to calm my racing heart. Today, he becomes my husband. Together, we can overcome anything? Yes. He nodded firmly to my question. I made the right choice. I'm so glad I met him. This was a moment when I was savoring happiness with him. Suddenly, my mobile phone rang. It was Lily. Honestly, I didn't want to answer, but if she's calling at a time like this, it might be something important. Reluctantly, I pressed the call button. Oh, Melody? Hi, how are you? I'm fine, goodbye. I almost hung up on reflex, but I managed to restrain myself. Why does she have to disrupt my mood today? I didn't want to feel irritated on such a day. I calmed myself and asked her calmly.
What's up? I'll excuse myself from your wedding today. Excuse me?
I had a feeling it was going to be something absurd, but this was beyond anything I expected. After a long pause in my reply,
Sorry, what did you just say?
I asked back.
I said, I'm not going to your wedding today. I realize there's no need to go to a stranger's wedding.
Stranger?
It won't be fun anyway, so why bother going? Plus, why celebrate for a stranger? There's no need, right?
So I'm not attending, lol.
What does Benjamin say?
No need to ask. Daddy says there's no need to go.
I think so too. So from now on, don't treat me like a sister. In fact, don't ever come to see me again.
We're strangers, lol. I was speechless. What a thing to say, to think she's family. My anger was rising. Enough. I don't want someone like her at my wedding. I planned my next move and spoke firmly.
Got it, you're not attending.
But are you sure? It's going to be tough, just remember that. She probably took my words as sour grapes. Lily's mocking laugh echoed from the other end of the phone. What are you even saying? I have and will continue to have a happy married life. You just live your miserable life in silence, lol. Bye. The call ended. I was about to boil over with anger at Lily's audacity, but seeing Patrick's concerned face calmed me down. I had one thing to do. Determined, I made a call to a certain place. After doing what I needed to, I switched my mindset and walked down the aisle as a happy bride. I enjoyed a wonderful reception, and then I realized, hey, isn't this the best ceremony? Because that awful Lily isn't here. The depressing presence that always had something nasty to say was absent. It was unexpected how much lighter and happier I felt without Lily there. As the reception neared its end, it was time for the bride and groom to give their thank you speech. The groom, Patrick, stood up, and I moved to stand beside him. At that moment, bang! A loud noise echoed, and the doors of the venue burst open.
What's the meaning of this?
A woman's scream resonated through the hall. It was Lily, her face flushed with anger. She must have rushed here, in her everyday clothes. Panting, with disheveled hair and clothes, she didn't look like a president's daughter. I expected the room to erupt into chaos, but it didn't. Of course, we had anticipated something like this might happen, so we had already explained the situation to the attendees in advance. And then, our prediction came true. I took the microphone from Patrick, who was next to me, and then I said, "What's the matter, Lily? You look so flustered."
What's the matter, you say? What did you do?
Lily's voice was louder than mine through the microphone. Her breathing was erratic. What do you mean?
Don't play dumb. Our company suddenly lost major clients who said they'd stop dealing with us. They mentioned it had something to do with you. What's this about?
Oh, that was quicker than I thought. That was my honest reaction. I smiled. You see, I know various business owners. I told them about the situation with your family's company, that a company run by a family like yours would soon go bankrupt.
How do you know business owners? Aren't you just a clerk?
Time to reveal the truth. My late biological parents, they were fairly prominent business owners. When they passed away, and I was left in shock, all our business partners came forward to support me.
What? So you were a president's daughter?
It's not a big deal. Just a small company with about 300 employees.
300? Our company only has just over 100. But why were you just a clerk then?
Someone acted as the president in my place until I became an adult. I couldn't just oust them after I grew up. So I stayed on as a clerk. But now that person is retiring, and my husband Patrick will be the next president. He's been recognized for his abilities.
What? You're going to be a president's wife?
Lily was taken aback. By the way, your family's company has a big deal with ours, right? Started because you insisted on it, wasn't it?
What's going to happen to that?
Of course, that deal is nearing its contract end too, so no renewal.
What?
Lily's scream echoed throughout the venue. There were chuckles from various places. Lily glared at the attendees, but then she noticed something shocking.
Why are you here?
She was looking at the family section. Yes, there sat my brother, Lily's husband, Benjamin. Benjamin shrugged lightly at Lily's words.
Why? Because I'm Melody's brother, but there's no blood relation. You don't need to attend a stranger's wedding. To you, family is only about blood, huh?
He said, looking sad.
I don't think so. Family is certainly about blood relations, but there's so much more to it. I've grown up with Melody and I love her as my family. I've never thought of her as anything but my sister. Melody will always be my dear sister.
At that moment Benjamin spoke, tears streamed down my face. I had always struggled since childhood, constantly questioning if I belonged in this family. Every time, my parents and Benjamin reassured me with a smile, "Of course, you do." They'd say, "You're an important part of our family," and hug me. Their comforting hand on my head saved me so many times. As Lily stood dumbfounded, Benjamin continued.
Lily, it's a shame. I never thought you could be so terrible. Sorry, but my love for you has completely cooled off. I can't be married to someone who calls my family strangers. What, Benjamin, what are you? I'm divorcing you. What? Why? Don't you see the contradiction in what you're saying? What? If family is only about blood relations, then you and I are complete strangers, aren't we? No, that's different. Marriage is,
Lily tried to make excuses, but she couldn't think of anything. Panicking, she fell silent.
That's what your words imply. So I can't stay with you anymore. I don't want to. We'll discuss the rest through lawyers. No, wait. I don't want a divorce. No.
Lily was desperately clinging to Benjamin. Then Lily's parents arrived, looking frantic. Seeing the influential guests at the reception, their faces turned pale. Apologizing profusely, they dragged Lily out of the venue. Afterward, due to the unexpected chaos, my husband, my parents, and I apologized to the reception guests.
Hang in there.
Warm words of encouragement came from the crowd. I was just grateful. Lily and her family faced a living hell afterwards. Who would want to deal with a company that has her? was the sentiment, leading to many canceled contracts. Her parents, unable to salvage the situation, even tried to cut ties with their daughter to maintain business relations, but no companies were willing to continue. Finally, Lily's parents retired, and an employee, chosen by the unanimous decision of the clients for their competence, became the new head, saving the company. I was relieved inside. I couldn't forgive Lily and her parents, but the company's employees were innocent. If Lily's parents hadn't stepped down, I would have offered those employees a place at our company. But, to my surprise, Lily's parents resigned with dignity. They planned to live a modest life in the countryside. As for Lily, despite her complaints about the divorce, it was finalized quite easily in the end. Why, you ask? Because a shocking affair came to light. I won't delve into the details, but Lily, who received a generous allowance as a president's daughter, was apparently frolicking with a man she met online while Benjamin was at work. Benjamin, noticing this, had been quietly gathering evidence. He was considering the right moment to bring up the divorce. I feel sorry for Benjamin, but I hope he finds happiness in the future. Lily, divorced by Benjamin and disowned by her parents. She apparently reached out to many acquaintances, but no one responded, and it said she disappeared into the night. Her whereabouts are unknown since then. As for me, I'm living a love-filled newlywed life with Patrick. One day we had this conversation. Shall we go visit the grave soon? I suggested. Yeah. There's so much I want to report to Dad and the others. Patrick replied. My parents and Patrick's parents both perished in the same major accident. We were both shocked to learn of our shared circumstances at work. In fact, that's how Patrick and I first connected. It must have been a bond formed by our parents in heaven. A precious gift of deep love from our parents watching over us from above. And here on earth, our adoptive parents watch over us with love. There's no greater happiness. Family isn't just about blood relations. It's about being tied together by a much stronger bond. Patrick gently took my hand. I grasped his warm hand tightly and smiled.
A small, old-age pension is all Mom lives on. And she's just a nuisance, right? I can't live with her. You take her.
Is this how you treat the mother who raised you alone? The attitude of my brother and his wife is just too awful. I can't leave Mom with them any longer. I would be happy to take her in, I exclaimed, grasping my mother's hand. But my mother is not just a nuisance. My name is Susan. I am a 39-year-old working mother. I married my husband after an office romance. Blessed with a son and a daughter, we lead a happy life. My father-in-law and mother-in-law are good people, and we maintain a comfortable distance in our relationship. What concerns me is my own family home. My mother, Bianca, she divorced when I was young and raised 3 children on her own. Only after having 2 children of my own did I realize how hard that must have been. If I were to separate from my husband now, I don't think I could raise 2 children alone. I am only grateful to my mother who raised me and my 2 brothers so well. Now she has gotten quite old. Although she worked until she was 65, she's still quite healthy in her 70s. But each time I see her, she seems older, which is heartbreaking. She still lives alone at home, but I'm starting to worry about her future. Then one day, I got a call from her. What? Move in with my brother? Yes. Thomas suggested it. What do you think? Thomas is my eldest brother. It's not unusual for the eldest son to live with his mother. Normally, I would be grateful for him taking care of our elderly mother, but I can't be happy about this because my older brother disliked her. When our parents divorced, I was only 3 and have little memory of my father, but my brother, now 46, was 10 at the time. A difficult pre-adolescent age. Maybe that's why he resents our mother. He was always complaining about how we had to live away from our beloved father and how our living standards dropped. But that's misguided. The divorce was due to our father's infidelity, and he stopped paying child support after the first year. I can somewhat understand my brother's feelings, but hating our mother even as an adult seems wrong. He never visits home, not for Christmas or other family gatherings. He lives only a 10-minute drive from our old house. He's married, but didn't even introduce his wife to us. He has no children and could easily visit, but he remains distant from me and our brother. Now that I think about it, I can't even remember what my sister-in-law Lucy looks like or what my brother looks like now. When was the last time I saw him? And now he's proposing to live with our mother? I have a bad feeling about this. Why does he suddenly want to live together? Oh, his rental lease is up for renewal. Apparently, his salary has decreased due to the economy, so he's having a hard time and wants to move in. What? That's completely self-serving, typical of my brother. If he wanted to live with mom out of concern for her, that would be one thing, but just to secure his own housing? No way. But the decision is up to mom. What do you want to do, mom? Well, living alone has its perks, but it's starting to get inconvenient. Then yesterday, Thomas and Lucy came to visit. Oh, really? Thomas apologized deeply, saying he was sorry for everything and asked to be allowed to show filial piety from now on. Wow, that's unexpected, right? Even though he disliked me so much, I was happy. Maybe my brother has grown up? With that, my mother and my brother's family began living together. From what my mother tells me, there were no problems at first. They respected her space and were quiet, but soon their true colors showed. Lucy is so cold. My mother's calls quickly turned to complaints. Lucy, she's a housewife but does nothing, no cleaning, no laundry. Not even there? I have always done my own, but they put their laundry in my basket expecting me to do it. Don't they offer to help? No, it's strange to take out their laundry and only wash mine. My back hurts from the increased load. Don't they help with any other household chores? No, they don't. I've heard that Lucy just lazes around all day doing nothing but lying on the sofa. Her main activities are eating snacks and watching TV. She doesn't clean up the crumbs, go shopping, or prepare meals. So mom is doing all the cleaning, shopping, and cooking for 3 people? Yes. What? That's not living together. That's just mooching off her. No, it's worse than that. I also heard that my brother and his wife aren't contributing to the grocery or utility bills. Really? Really? I was so astounded I couldn't close my mouth. Why didn't you discuss and agree on these things before moving in together? I asked, but mom seemed troubled. We did talk about it beforehand, she said. At first, my brother was paying mom the agreed amount, but that soon stopped, even when she subtly asked for it.
This month's tied with extra expenses and my reduced salary,
he would say, evading the issues. Not paying rent, utilities, or food costs? Where are they spending their money? Actually, they bought a car. What? If they're short on money, why buy a car, especially when it's not necessary here? I paid for it. Mom, paid for it? I couldn't help but react. They said it would be hard for me to get to the hospital or shopping, so they would drive me around, but I haven't ridden in it once. It was so outrageous that I tried calling my brother, but he wouldn't answer. It ended up being call rejection. Unbelievable. A few days later, another call from mom. This time, shocking news. Thomas got laid off and is now unemployed. It was a seriously unsettling story. A few days later, my worries grew when my calls to my mom went unanswered, and she didn't contact me either. Filled with anxiety, I asked my husband to take care of the kids and hurriedly boarded a train. If we lived closer, I could visit my parents' home more often, but due to my husband's job, we live far away. After a 2-hour train ride, I arrived at my childhood home, which seemed much older than I remembered. Standing in front of the house, I rang the doorbell, but with no response, I gently tried the front door, and it opened easily. That meant someone must be home, but why was there no answer? Just as I thought to call out, wondering what was happening, I heard a groaning sound. Unmistakably, it was my mother's voice. Mom? Rushing into her room, I found her lying on the floor. Mom? I felt my blood run cold. I hurried to her side and called out to her. Then her eyes opened. Mom, are you okay? I need to call 911. As I reached for my phone to dial, she stopped my hand. Mom? Hungry. What? Well, what do you mean? Are you in pain? I need to call for help. I was hungry. Despite my urgency to call for help, she wouldn't let go of my hand. Struggling to free myself, she mastered all her strength and said, "I'm hungry." And then she collapsed back onto the floor. "Thank you. I haven't eaten anything since yesterday." My mother continued to eat voraciously. In front of me, who had hurriedly bought food, she devoured everything with incredible speed. Even in her 70s, her appetite hadn't diminished. But this wasn't the time to be impressed. According to her, my brother and his wife, knowing she couldn't move due to back pain, had left her alone and gone out. "What were you thinking leaving Mom like this?" As I was fuming, there was a noise at the entrance. My brother and his wife had returned. "Hey, what are you doing, leaving Mom with a bad back?"
Whoa, Susan, you scared me. You have aged a bit since I last saw you.
"Never mind that.
You have aged too. What's the big deal all of a sudden? Don't just barge into someone's house."
Mom was collapsed from hunger.
We didn't know. She could have had some instant food or something.
I checked everywhere from the fridge to the pantry and there's nothing. How could you leave her unable to shop?" My anger grew at my brother's indifference. However, my brother doesn't understand it at all, but he just seemed annoyed.
So noisy. It's easy for you to say you don't live with her.
"I heard Mom does all the housework."
Well, we let her stay with us, so she should do that much.
"Lucy, you don't do anything around the house, right?" When I glared at Lucy standing behind my brother, she clicked her tongue too. "So annoying. We let her live with us. She should do at least that much." What a pair they were. So wonderfully in agreement. No, that didn't matter. What's the point of living together if Mom does everything?
It's comforting to know we're here in case of emergency.
What nonsense! This is an emergency. My anger was unrelenting, but it didn't seem to affect them at all. They just looked annoyed.
Enough with the noise, really. Mom living on her meager old age pension is just in the way.
Even though you use that pension to buy a car?
That's only natural. I'm the eldest and I take care of our parents.
When have you ever taken care of anything? Yelling in frustration, my throat started to hurt. My brother, who was never close to our mother, had become a complete stranger. It's just too sad for Mom. Think more about Mom.
Shut up. What does an outsider have to say?
No matter what I said, my brother wouldn't understand. He glared at me irritably.
I thought living with Mom on her pension would let us live freely. Didn't expect it to be so little.
Saying this with a sigh, the look in his eyes towards our mother was cold. Mother looked down, saddened. To her, my brother said with a laugh,
"Really, a penniless mom is just a nuisance."
"Hey, brother,
if she's so important, you take her."
"What?" I couldn't believe it. I wanted to believe it. Despite his resentment, he still had some gratitude towards our mother, but my hope was crushed. Biting my lip, I glared at my brother and Lucy, who were laughing mockingly. I couldn't let these people have their way. I didn't want Mom to suffer anymore. So while glaring, I managed a smile and said, "Right. You two can provide a peaceful old age for Mom. I'll gladly take care of her." "Susan?" Surprised, I smiled to reassure Mom. "It's okay, Mom. I'm sorry to move you out of this house, but come stay with us." "But Oliver has always said it's okay to live together, but I thought it's better if you stayed with my brother. It's fine now, right? Mom, come live with us. Let me repay you for raising us." As I reached out my hand, tears filled her eyes. "Thank you, Susan."
Hey, get out quickly. Enjoy your cramped life in your tiny house.
After glancing at my brother, we left our childhood home. Mom's possessions were surprisingly few. Turns out unemployed Lucy had been selling them off. Unbelievable. I should have come to fetch her sooner. The regret was overwhelming. But my brother's words, though he had never seen my house, hit a nerve. I looked at Mom apologetically. "Sorry, Mom. I got carried away. Our place is really small. It might be cramped. Our condo, suitable for a couple's income, was very small. Too small to give individual rooms to our teenage kids. How do I arrange a room for Mom?" As I pondered, my brother's words echoed.
Just so you know, Mom's room is gone. This place is ours now.
That jerk. I was about to glare back, but Mom placed her hand on mine. "It's okay. Mom, it's okay, Susan. Let's live together in a mansion." "What?" Her sudden words puzzled me. As I wondered, Mom smiled at my brother and his wife. Thank you for everything. From now on, I'll live in a mansion with Susan's family.
Huh?
My brother and his wife looked just as puzzled, but without explaining, Mom said, "Goodbye." And she started walking, pulling my hand. What did she mean?
Probably just sour grapes.
Or maybe she's finally lost it with age. Hearing my brother and his wife's voices, I left with Mom. 2 years later, aliens have invaded our peaceful home. Suddenly, it was my brother and his wife. In the middle of the night, who could it be? I rushed to the intercom and saw them on the monitor. It had been a long time. As unwelcome as thieves, I thought, but opened the door and they barged in and immediately,
What the hell is this?
he yelled, "It's the middle of the night. Don't yell, it's rude.
Shut up, explain what's going on.
If you want me to explain, I can't stay quiet." My logical reply made my brother's face turn red. So, what's this about? Upon my question, my brother pointed at the walls of the house and shouted,
What is this place?
"It's a house. Just a house."
I'm asking, what's with this mansion?
A mansion is a fancy term for a big house.
Stop it already.
Though I was deliberately invasive, his frustration made him tear at his ear.
How could you afford such a mansion with Mom's old age pension and your income? I'm struggling financially right now. Help me out a bit.
Yes, we had moved to a much larger house. Compared to it, our old house was indeed tiny. That's right. Certainly, our income wouldn't have been enough for this house. I smiled. "Thanks, brother," and said,
Huh?
My sudden gratitude puzzled him, so I repeated, "Really? Thank you." I said,
What do you mean?
"Thanks for handing Mom over to me. This house was built with her money."
What? How could she afford this? We barely had savings growing up and her pension was so little.
"Maybe it's from an inheritance?"
Huh?
"Did you know? Mom's dad, our grandpa, was quite wealthy."
Now that you mention it, it does ring a bell.
Mom received a substantial inheritance from him.
That can be. We lived a poor life when we were kids.
Mom tried to outdo her ex-husband who wouldn't pay child support. She vowed to raise us with her own strength without touching the inheritance. I was stunned to hear the amount. Despite having that money, she chose a hard life out of pride. I respect her for that. Sure, we might have been poor, but I never hated it. She managed to send us to good schools and provide a normal life. How could you treat Mom so badly after all her hard work? What are you doing here now, especially in the middle of the night? Go back home. I pointed out, but my brother didn't move. Then Lucy, unabashed, chimed in. "So this house belongs to Bianca, right? That means it will eventually be ours." Huh? Her sudden claim baffled me, but Lucy looked down on me. "Of course, even if you inherit it as a provisional heir, we have a right to a compulsory portion." She was well informed, but I responded firmly. "Too bad. This house is already mine, gifted to me during Mom's lifetime. The deed is in my name." "What? Even if it's a gift, we still have rights to a portion. You will have to pay us." Despite not working, Lucy knew about these things. She had a point. If Mom's only asset was this mansion and it harmed my brother's compulsory portion, he could claim his share after her passing. But unfortunately for them, that wasn't our intention. I showed them a paper I had prepared for such a situation, brought by my husband who sensed the need. "Good job, husband. I'm impressed now." This is a statement of Mom's asset. Huh? First, this house was gifted to me as my property.
Huh?
Then most of the remaining cash goes to our middle brother.
Huh?
And the last of the assets is this. I pointed to the item. Yes, it was our childhood home, currently occupied by my brother and his wife. You were gifted our childhood home, right? You can't say you didn't receive it. The house may be old, but it's in a great location, quite a valuable property. You should be benefiting the most, even more than our middle brother, with this mansion and the cash, right? When the results came out, I was quite dissatisfied, but it couldn't be helped. If this meant cutting ties, then it was a small price to pay. The middle brother had already agreed. "Any complaints now?" I had no sympathy for my brother who forcefully ousted our mother and took over our childhood home, regardless of how hard his life might be. I'll let you have the childhood home, but go back. This means we're done with you. I shouted, but the troubled-looking couple didn't move. What now? You still have something to say? My brother, looking everywhere but at me, finally spoke.
No, nothing left.
What do you mean, nothing left?
The house is gone.
What?
Yes, we did receive it as a gift. I transferred it to my name.
Great, but what do you mean by the house is gone?
We sold it.
What? What did you say?
We've already sold it. The house is gone.
What did you say? Sold it right after transferring it to his name? What was he thinking? Well, he must have had made a fortune then, so it should be fine. I didn't understand why they were here in the middle of the night. The couple before me turned paler and paler.
Actually, the money from selling the house went to pay off debts.
What? How so?
We tried a big investment hoping for a turnaround.
Uh-huh.
And it was a huge failure.
Uh-huh.
Even after selling the house and paying off, we're still short.
Uh-huh.
What do we do?
I don't know. I was speechless. Apparently, they paid off their debts by selling the house, but then made another investment, which surprisingly failed, plunging them back into debt. So that's why you came here in the middle of the night?
Please hide us or even pay off our debts.
As if you brought this on yourself. My husband and I tried to prevent them from entering the house, but as we were struggling, a siren.
What?
A police car siren sounded and stopped in front of the house. The couple, clearly guilty of something, fled. They must have done something illegal beyond just failing to repay debts. It was Mom who called the police. She had been watching everything. I wondered if I failed at raising my child, she murmured weakly. Later, I got a call from my brother. Lucy had filed for divorce. No surprise there. Lucy, who never wanted to work, probably saw no more use in him. I only got a call about the divorce from someone who never announced their marriage. As expected, he called to ask for money. Turns out, ex-Lucy also got into investing post-divorce. Claiming to have better foresight than that man, she quickly went bankrupt and into debt. Then, unsurprisingly, she turned to my brother for help. Ridiculous! I only told him I wanted no further involvement. Mom is happily gardening in the splendid garden of her new home. She started a home garden and my teenage sons are happily helping, enjoying the harvest. The spacious house comfortably accommodates the visiting family of my middle brother. I want to make this beautiful house a place of happiness for Mom till the end. I see it as my way of repaying her.
Leave the money and get out quickly. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? As I felt lost, Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished." At that moment, I had no idea the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs. No change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own. Now, Thomas, Dad, and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles the dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother Jason. Dad is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad, and Dad, being soft, lends him the money. "Dad, lending money is fine, but has he ever paid you back?" "Violet, when you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that." "But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky? When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. That was the first time I'd ever heard about my dad's younger days. So that's why I want to support Jason's dreams. But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day? Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way is part of the story. Well, you sound like a poet. Makes sense since you wanted to be a novelist. Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise. I'm not praising you. Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him, but it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home. Let me introduce you. This is Charlotte. From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm Violet, the sister. Nice to meet you. Charlotte is 5 years younger than me, but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jujitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't brag-worthy, like headbutting a disrespectful boss. Two kinds of stories I really can't stand: bragging about bad behavior in the past, bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came home to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up. Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with a plant manager just because I forgot to put away a cart. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chin. Charlotte seemed pleased, asking, Total KO? I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would. Every workplace has people you won't get along with. But even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center, so yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee. I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in. You're siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. Oh, so you're lecturing me. You better be ready for this. Ready? Want to take this outside? Or here's fine too. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager? Feeling threatened, I walked away. I couldn't believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. The era of living to 100. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said, Violet, actually, Lawrence. What? Never mind. What do you mean, never mind? Just tell me. Later. Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me. Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance? I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me. When I raised my voice, Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback but didn't want to apologize. Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough. Don't yell. What are we going to do about the inheritance? I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason. Jason, aren't you sad that Dad passed away? That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you. What did you just say? The atmosphere was tense until Thomas arrived. What's going on here? Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right. Those words crossed the line. I'll pass that message right along to Jason. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier. Decision? Jason dropped a bombshell. I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I'm perfectly sane, Jason said, stone-faced. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up. Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress. Fine. We sat down at the table to hash it out. The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between 2 households, there won't be much left. There's only 2 of Dad's children, me and Jason, so it should be divided between us. But Jason scowled. Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money. Why don't you get a job, Jason? Let me finish. Living in the house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know. The best way to honor him is to pack Carnegie Hall. You can't even pack the local park. What if I do fill Carnegie Hall? Will you put your money where your mouth is? What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police. Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in? I cannot. Then Thomas calmly asked Jason, So, you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes. And you're okay with that, Jason? What are you talking about? Of course it's not okay. At that point, Charlotte glared at me. Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time. Such words should not be tolerated. When I glared at her, Charlotte glared back with an angry face. Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hag. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults. Thomas, wasn't it? You should have set her straight. What a useless couple you are. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet. If you weren't as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago. For a moment, Charlotte looked dumbfounded, but then turned to Jason. Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can. I'll apologize when Charlotte does. Enough, both of you. Violet, calm down. Fine. Let's proceed with the disinheritance, Violet. I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas. So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited. I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying. What an infuriating couple. A wife who acts younger than she is, and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb. Leave the money and move out already. Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family, despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this. We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time. If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside. Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me. Unable to contain my anger, I stepped outside. I wonder if Dad is also at fault. Thomas smiled at my confusion. It worked. Our plan was a success. What? These moments make me thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are still substantial monthly expenses: rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this kind of effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively, and when he's out of money, he turns to Dad. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired. I always tell my kids how important it is to save, so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo. Once we'd finished unpacking, Thomas said, "Let's consult a lawyer first." A lawyer? to initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up? That's when Thomas finally told me what he had almost mentioned before. While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt. What? Because of Jason? Yes. That made them even more unforgivable. Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life. You're not entirely right, but you're close. Huh? Thomas told me something even more shocking. Charlotte had yelled loudly from behind Dad and pushed him with both hands. It wasn't just a one-time prank. It had happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far. In other words, Lawrence had much more debts than assets. You get what I'm saying? Yes, now I get it. Inheritors receive not just assets, but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance. Let's ask the lawyer. That's the best course. We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I thought they might show up, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo. Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Set you up? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold. I calmly took out my mobile phone. Hello, is this the police? What are you doing? Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off. Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this? Then Thomas stepped in. Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off. Jason was at a loss for words when Charlotte interjected. Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me. Or should we lay it all out for a third play? I'll share every detail of what happened. Jason, are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life? Unable to respond, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte was defiant. If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent. Charlotte smirked, glanced back, and looked at Thomas again. Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerce me? Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation. Idiot! Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing. Seeing Charlotte's tirade, Thomas turned to Jason. Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second. Excuse me. Who are you telling to shut up? Feeling something dangerous in Charlotte's menacing glare, I said, If you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's go back for now. As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I could hear their arguing voices, but I was more concerned about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood. Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute. A few seconds later, I heard Jason's screams from down the hall, but I pretended not to know him. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like a dying scream, but it had nothing to do with me. Jason and Charlotte had insulted us, so obviously they'd severed ties with our family. So whether they divorce or Charlotte gets arrested for assault, it has nothing to do with me. A few days later, I got a call from Jason. Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? Who is this? Don't be like that. We're siblings, right? I couldn't help but feel it was too late. Turns out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. This was like something straight out of a comic book. Ever heard the term, you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills. That's unfortunate. No matter how coldly I brushed him off, Jason kept begging. Please, for the love of God, help me. I'm not God. Is Thomas there? Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family. My words seemed to hit hard, and Jason was speechless. Switching the call, Thomas took over. After a brief chat, he hung up. Let's go to the hospital. Don't give him a cent. I know. Thomas and I went to the hospital, but not to visit. It's better to say it face to face. Jason pleaded in a polite tone. Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the first floor of the hospital. Their nurse told me. I'm scared to death. But Thomas looked stern. After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. Well, if we're not cutting ties, then why disinherit? Disinheritance means cutting family ties. Jason looked down and spoke softly. I apologize for what I've done, but I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? We're divorced. A family falling apart, then. She's at the police station for assault. It felt unreal. You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me. Jason looked troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said, but those on the receiving end don't forget. I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I have heard it from Charlotte as well. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband. What does that even mean? Explain it to me. Thomas presses on logically. What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman? Those are not words you say to a woman. Jason seems to have forgotten not just his own comments, but also those made by Charlotte. Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young wannabe or a 50-year-old hag. Don't repeat it. Sorry. Thomas doesn't let up. You said it to me as well. When I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance, you told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now. Jason lowers his head on the bed, looking like he's about to cry. I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me. Thomas glares at the trembling Jason. Explain it. What? Jason shakes and his eyes go wide with a terrified look. If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties off completely. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly. Thomas looks down at the dejected Jason, then turns to me. Shall we go? Yes. After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy, but he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face. I saw your scary side today. There's nothing like that. Be kind to me, okay? Of course. The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight.
I've been putting up with you, making me feel terrible all this time. So the least you can do is contribute to the wedding costs. It's your daughter's big day, after all. But why aren't you inviting me to the wedding? Well, it would be embarrassing. I would have wanted Dad to be there, but I don't want people to know I have a countryside grandma, like you, as my mother. You're living off Dad's estate and pension, yet you have the audacity to show up at ceremonies and act all important? It's just shameless. My name is Stacy. I lost my husband Bennett a few years ago, and now I live alone. The house that Bennett, who was a CEO, left me feels too big for just myself. However, I manage by enjoying my gardening hobby. I have 2 children, my son Ralph and my daughter Ellie. Both are independent and do not live with me. Ralph got married last year and lives in the neighboring state, while Ellie is single and seems to be focused on her work, although she plans to get married to her boyfriend soon. To others, it might seem like I'm enjoying a comfortable retirement, with my children being independent. I do feel blessed, but I also have my worries, especially about my daughter Ellie. Since she was a child, Ellie has always been a strong-willed, competitive, and active girl, unlike me, who is more laid back.
She didn't get along with me and was closer to Bennett, who was more active in society. When Bennett fell ill, Allie's attitude towards me got worse, and when he passed away, she blamed me, saying, "This happened because Mom wasn't strong enough." I was already emotionally drained from losing Bennett, and Ellie's words were just too much for me. However, with Ralph's support, I was able to recover. Ralph comforted me, saying, "It's not your fault, Mom. You did your best. It's just that you and Ellie have different personalities, so don't worry about it." However, Ellie's attitude towards me didn't change, and she stopped coming home, even for Christmas. Now, we rarely see each other. I found out that Ellie is considering marrying her boyfriend, not from her, but from someone else. Ellie lives in a condominium nearby, but she rarely visits or contacts me. Even if I contacted her, the probability of a reply was low. I thought maybe the company was busy, so I refrained from insisting on contacting them. But one day, I was surprised to hear about Ellie's recent situation in a call from Ralph. "By the way, Mom, have you heard about Ellie?" "What's that?" "Oh, dear. She hasn't told Mom anything again. Ellie, you see, is getting married to her college boyfriend." "What? I haven't heard anything about that. I haven't even met the boyfriend." "The two of them often travel together and bring us souvenirs from various places. I always told her to properly talk to you, but you haven't even met him." "She doesn't come here at all. I thought she was too busy with work to come." "Really? She said she's not busy at all since she moved apartments. She's been able to go to various places with her boyfriend because of that." Ralph was certainly surprised, but I was even more so. There was so much I didn't know about Ellie, and it was hard to have a conversation with Ralph. "By the way, what's Ellie's boyfriend like?" "Well, his name is Glenn. To be honest, I don't really like him. I think he's a good match for Ellie's personality, but..." "Ralph is gentle and similar to me in personality. If he doesn't like Glenn, then I probably won't either." Adding to that, the information that Glenn is a good match for Ellie's personality gave me a rough idea of what kind of person he is. "I'm worried about various things." "I understand how you feel, but Ellie is an adult. She'll be fine. They'll probably get along well as a married couple, and won't bother Mom too much." "Is that so? That's a bit sad, but it can't be helped." The conversation ended there, but the problem was what happened afterward. A few weeks after the call with Ralph, I finally received a contact from Ellie. Hearing from Ellie after a long time was undoubtedly a happy occasion, even if she hated me, and I was noticeably cheerful when I answered the phone. "It's been a while. Why did you suddenly contact me? Did something happen?" My cheerful voice was the complete opposite of Ellie's, which was stiff and cold. "I got married last week." "What?" I was stunned by Ellie's unexpected statement. "And I have a favor to ask. When I told my husband about our house, he said he wanted to live together. We're going to decide on a new house eventually, but can we temporarily live in your house? You have plenty of rooms to spare, right?" "Well, there are rooms, but being asked so suddenly..." I've already arranged for the movers. I've also terminated my apartment lease. It's not a big deal if 2 more people move into that big house, right?" I felt angry at Ellie for selfishly moving things forward, despite having neglected her family home until now. "If you've already canceled the room, there was nothing I could do but accept it." "Fine, but you must find a new place immediately." "Who do you think you are? That house was built by Dad, and you're living off the money and pension he left behind." "Really, Ellie?" "That's all I wanted to talk about. Goodbye." With that, Ellie hung up the phone. I was at a loss as to what to do. But there was nothing to be done. The thought of someone else in the space I had been alone in for so long might be surprisingly pleasant, and I hoped that living with Ellie again would help mend our relationship. On the day, I prepared lunch for 2, waiting anxiously for Ellie to arrive. When the doorbell rang, I welcomed her in. Hi, long time no see. It's been a while. Ellie's appearance had changed dramatically. Her hair was dyed blue and white, and she wore flashy clothes unlike before. What happened to your hair? Didn't your company say anything? Huh? Company? I quit. What? And since I'm back, I won't have any trouble living. Stop nagging me about my looks, just because you dress like an old lady. Just as I was starting to feel uneasy about our future, a man entered. Hi, I'm Glenn. I married Ellie. Nice to meet you. Hi. I'm Stacy. Nice to meet you too. This is a big house. The yard is huge. We could have a barbecue. Right, Ellie? Yeah, let's invite everyone over next week. Ellie's attitude towards me changed completely, and she chatted happily with Glenn. They stomped upstairs, calling in the movers, and pushed past me on the stairs. Hey, Mom, we can choose any room, right? One for me and Glenn each. Yes. I made lunch. Do you want any? No thanks. We'll eat out later. Saying that, the two began unpacking noisily. From the second floor, there was never-ending noise and laughter, and one cardboard box after another was carried in by the movers. The cardboard boxes that didn't fit in the room were left on the first floor. It seemed that the two had finished unpacking as they came downstairs. It looked like they were going out to eat. What are you going to do with these cardboard boxes? Oh, just leave them there. We'll be back. It felt like the storm had passed, but I couldn't help sighing at the sight of the large cardboard boxes left in the corridor. Life afterwards was stifling. They acted as if I didn't exist, and gradually the house began to fall into disarray. They didn't cook, clean, or do laundry, and all those burdens fell on me. Glenn had a job, but he seemed to be changing jobs frequently, and I doubted he was earning a decent salary. Ellie, who had quit her job, showed no sign of looking for work and mostly spent her time lying on the sofa, fiddling with her mobile phone. Hey, Ellie, are you looking for a job? Shut up! Glenn's working, isn't he? But still, I've been a housewife for years, so don't act like you're any better. I'll work when I find a job that suits me. She would change the topic and snap at me, and in the end, we would never have a real conversation. I was already getting sick of this stifling situation, but before I knew it, a week had passed since Ellie and Glenn moved in. One Saturday morning, I saw Ellie and Glenn busy preparing something, so I asked them what was happening. Huh? Didn't we tell you we're having a barbecue to celebrate our move? Our friends are coming over later, so be nice. What? Didn't you hear Stacy? Mom, you're so slow and forgetful. Oh, and stay in your room. It'd be embarrassing if our friends saw you. They laughed at me and, without asking for permission, started setting up the grill and chairs in the garden. Later, their friends arrived and they all had a barbecue, making a racket from the afternoon. I watched from my room on the second floor as my carefully tended garden and flowers were trampled and destroyed, and felt a mix of anger and sadness well up inside me. In the evening, the barbecue seemed to be over, but Ellie and her friends were getting ready to go out. Ellie, where do you think you're going, leaving everything like this? Hey, Mom, we told you to stay in your room. Even Glenn's friends, who were headed to the car, stopped at the sound of my voice. Glenn, apparently drunk, pointed at me and started laughing. Oh, it's Parasite Stacy. Huh? Parasite? That's what Ellie's been calling her. She's been living at our house like a parasite for years. That's why Ellie said she won't invite her to the wedding. She's been saying that since they were dating. She'll take her money but won't invite her. Glenn laughed loudly as he said this, and his friends dragged him to the car. Ellie laughed mockingly as I stood there, stunned. Well, that's what I think. She's made me feel bad for years, so the least she can do is pay for the wedding. It's her daughter's big day, right? But not inviting her to the wedding? What's that about? I'd be embarrassed. If Dad were alive, I'd want him there. But I don't want people to find out my mother is like some country grandma. She's living off Dad's estate and pension like a parasite, and then she shows up at weddings and funerals, acting all important. It's just too much. Ellie laughed again as she walked past me. Oh, and can you clean up the garden? I'm going out for drinks. With that, she got in the car with her friends and drove off. I sighed as I looked at the messy garden, realizing that the innocent Ellie who used to play there was gone. Maybe she changed for the worse because of Glenn and his friends. But her feelings towards me haven't changed. She genuinely feels that way about me. That I'm a leech living off Bennett's estate, that I'm not independent or interesting. But I have a secret that I haven't told my children. About 10 years ago, I started investing in stocks with Bennett's guidance, and now I receive $20,000 in dividends annually. So I actually have enough money to move out and live on my own. In fact, I've been considering selling this house because it's become too difficult to manage as I've aged. But it's also the house where I shared so many memories with Bennett, and I don't want my children to lose their childhood home. But now that things have come to this, I need to do something. I was resting after cleaning up when I got a call from Ralph. Mom, I heard. Did Ellie and Glenn come to the house? I can't say I'm okay. They've been here for a week, and I'm already exhausted. I knew it. Mom, those two are planning to take over the house. They might even try to take the estate. I've met Glenn, and he's the type to spend money recklessly. Ellie said she's almost out of savings. What? She used up her savings? Yeah, she was calm about it, but I was shocked. She said they were planning to have a destination wedding. Do you think she's serious? They're probably expecting me to pay for it. Ellie and Glenn's true colors were starting to show. At the same time, a thought crossed my mind. By the way, Ralph, may I come visit soon? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. After hearing everything, I feel like we can't let things continue this way. Yes. We need to talk about it. And if Mom comes, Judy will be happy too. We'll be waiting. A few days later, I headed to Ralph's house. Glenn had gone to work, but Ellie was still sleeping late, as usual. I told her I was leaving through the bedroom door, but there was no response. Ralph's wife, Judy, warmly welcomed me, a visitor from the next state over. She seemed to have heard the situation from Ralph. Stacy, I've heard from Ralph. I know there's a lot we need to talk about, but please, make yourself at home while you're here. Thank you, Judy. After being welcomed by the two of them, I first revealed the secret of my assets. They were both surprised to learn that I, whom they thought was a housewife, actually owned stock and received approximately $20,000 in dividends annually. But they were even more surprised when they heard about my next proposition. I'm worried that if Ellie and the others find out I have stock, it will lead to trouble. Given the current situation, I think it's just a matter of time. So, I'd like to transfer my stock to you two at this time. What? Are you sure? Us? Isn't there another way? No, I want to give it to you. After a moment of silence, during which they seemed to be overwhelmed by my momentum, they looked at each other and reluctantly nodded. Then, after consulting in low voices, Ralph spoke up. So, as a way of saying thank you, how about Mom lives with us in this house? What? We were just talking about it, Ralph and I. That house is too big for Stacy to live in alone, and we're worried about you. It seems like the right time. What do you think? I gladly accepted their proposal. Afterwards, I made the bold decision to sell the house I had been living in. The process of transferring the stock to Ralph and his wife, as well as the sale of the house, were completed without a hitch. As I quietly packed up the house, Ellie, who seemed to find my actions suspicious, approached me. Mom, it looks like things are disappearing from the house. Is something going on? Oh, I was going to tell you. I've decided to sell the house. You two will need to leave soon. What? What do you mean? I'm moving to Ralph's house tomorrow, so please leave as soon as possible. If you stay, I'll call the police. What are you talking about? I can't deal with this all of a sudden. But you don't even listen to me, and you never call back when I reach out. Hearing Ellie's voice, Glenn also came downstairs to find out what was happening, and sure enough, he was furious. Hey, Ellie, what's this all about? Weren't we supposed to be able to live here forever? I don't know. I'm just as surprised as you are. I won't interfere with you and your husband anymore, so don't worry. I hope your wedding will be a wonderful one. Wait a minute, Mom, you're going to help pay for the wedding, right? It's your daughter's big day. No, I'm a parasite, remember? I don't have any money to give you. And I've decided to have Ralph and Judy manage all my assets, including my stocks. Ellie and Glenn's faces twisted more and more. I glanced at the two of them as I was getting ready to leave from the entrance. Stocks? Mom, when did you do that? You've been calling me a parasite and pension-living grandma, but even I have my strength. I had a $20,000 dividend from stock investments every year. I was actually considering giving some to you. Well, take care. As I closed the entrance door, I could hear them arguing from inside the house. I was worried, but at the same time, I felt a strong sense of relief and joy, thinking, I finally told them off. I clenched my fist and headed to Ralph's house. After that, Ellie and Glenn managed to find a place to live, but their relationship quickly became strained. They visited me once, completely different from before, trying to butter me up and win me over. What's more, Glenn, perhaps because he knew I had some stocks left, bragged about recently starting stock trading and tried to get me to give him some. I remember finding it amusing how transparent his intentions were. Since then, the two have been living separately. Ellie seems to be having a hard time finding a new job. But she has no savings, and she has to make a living, so she's been working part-time jobs day and night while looking for employment. It's easy to imagine how mentally cornered she must feel, given that she used to look down on people who couldn't earn their own living. But I had no intention of helping her. She and Glenn, who have always looked down on their parents and called them parasites, are now getting their just desserts. I hope they manage to support each other and prevent their already difficult lives from falling apart completely. As for me, I am now living a peaceful and contented life with my eldest son and his wife. I share hobbies with Judy, and when I think about the suffocating days I used to have, I'm so glad I decided to live with them. Recently, my grandchildren were born. They are adorable little girls, like angels. Supporting busy Judy is hard, but I feel very fulfilled every day. Since they are gentle children, I don't have to worry about them growing up to call their parents parasites like someone else we know. From now on, I want to continue to live a peaceful and happy life, savoring the true happiness that is characteristic of me, with Ralph and Judy and the grandchildren.